A coal-fired or nuclear power station is unlikely to be blown away by a storm or destroyed by hailstones, as they are substantial constructions designed to last 70 or 80 years. Compare and contrast that with flimsy wind turbines and fragile solar panels which are built on the cheap in China, would last about 5 years if you're lucky, and will fall apart in a storm, just like those we will see in this video have done in Wales. It's ironic that the fragility of the wind turbines and solar panels themselves is matched only by the fragility of the electricity grid they create, so I guess it's an appropriate way to go. Renewable assets, with a few exceptions like pumped hydro, are, just like EVs, essentially disposable. Wind turbines, battery storage systems and solar panels are all consumable items. Wind turbines might have a useful life of 20 years if you're lucky, following which the blades will just be buried in holes in the ground, because they're virtually incapable of being recycled. How wonderfully environmentally friendly that is. Solar panels are even worse, and are even more susceptible to weather events than wind turbines, and are full to the brim with toxic chemicals as well. And then there's just the sheer quantity of them required. A few large coal or nuclear power stations dotted around the country concentrate the energy production into a tiny footprint, easy to connect to the grid and simple to maintain. But the acres and acres of wind turbines and solar panels require a costly tangle of transmission lines and make maintenance incredibly inefficient and time-consuming. Australia has a far harsher climate than Wales, for example. We regularly get golf ball-sized hail from thunderstorms, which would destroy an entire solar factory in a matter of minutes, something that a coal or nuclear power station is designed to withstand. But nobody cares about this because all of the net zero madness, both here and in the UK, is driven purely by ideology. And we all know that no amount of rational argument will ever change that. Welcome back to MGUY, British engineer and lawyer, now Sydney-based YouTuber. Be sure to follow me on the usual socials for more content, links in the description, and please make sure you're subscribed and have enabled all notifications so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you'd like to support this channel, why not buy me a coffee? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. As part of the UK's media industrial complex's plan to indoctrinate climate alarmism, every Atlantic depression is now named Storm This or Storm That to give the false impression that the weather is getting worse. So when Storm Dara hit the UK, it spectacularly demonstrated just how vulnerable renewable energy assets are. Take a look at this drone footage from the Daily Mail. So there's no audio with this video, but for those of you who are listening, it's just acres and acres of solar panels which have been ripped off their fixings, scattered around on the ground. And a wind turbine on the ground here looks like it's burned from the top of the pole, which has like carbon deposits on it. Wind turbines have to be shut down in very high winds, and what frequently happens is that the braking system fails and the turbine spins out of control until it disintegrates, or the heat generated causes it to catch fire. And solar panels are either smashed by hailstones or ripped up by wind, as Wales Online reports. Huge storm-wrecked solar farm on Anglesey won't be repaired until 2025. Hundreds of solar panels were torn off their fixings during Storm Dara. Repairs to a storm-damaged solar farm on Anglesey will take weeks to complete, its owners have said. A clean-up is underway at the giant Porthwen array near Kemais as EDF Renewables UK assesses the extent of the damage. Hundreds of panels at the 190-acre site were shredded and torn off their fixings during Storm Dara at the weekend. The huge solar farm was built just 2 years ago, and residents living nearby now fear land contamination from shattered solar panels. Questions have also been asked about the wisdom of building solar farms in a place known as the Windy Island. Solar critics claim what happened shows the folly of permitting much larger installations on Anglesey, amid fears the island risks becoming saturated by solar arrays. Currently in the planning pipeline are 2 mega solar units covering 3,700 acres of mostly farmland, equating to around 2% of Anglesey's entire land area. Both are also earmarked for the north of the island, and the bigger of the two, Main here, is around 5 times the size of the UK's largest currently active solar farm. The other, Alor Mon, will have an installed capacity more than 3 times that of Porthwen. Joe Blair, who lives near the Porthwen development, said residents were very concerned. She said EDF hasn't been in touch or put up any signage or barriers to warn the public to keep away. Construction work at Porthwen began in June 2022, with the first electricity generated later in the year. Despite local protests, planning consent for the 49.9 megawatt scheme was secured in 2017 by Countryside Renewables North Anglesey. At the time, it was the biggest scheme ever consented in Wales, capable of powering up to 9,500 homes. Well, that's 49.9 megawatts when operating at full capacity in midday summer sunshine. Given Wales is one of the wettest and dullest places on Earth, no offence, even by UK standards, you can bet it won't be generating 49.9 megawatts very often, even in the daytime. And of course in winter, when there's 16 hours of darkness, its capacity is a big fat 0. What a total waste of money these solar factories are, especially in cloudy places like the UK. And the sheer scale of these eyesores is staggering, covering thousands upon thousands of acres of pristine farmland for something that might produce decent electricity 10 or 20% of the time. Are you starting to see why ideology drives this madness? It's because without ideology, nobody would be stupid enough to consider it. This article in Euronews is hilarious as it tries to defend solar panels against the indefensible. Are solar farms destroyed during storms? Experts debunk the myth that panels can't handle the wind. Yes, accompanied by a photo of destroyed solar panels. Clearly a myth then. And then a green energy proponent who runs a solar panel trade association, no vested interest there, gives us all the reasons why solar panels are so wonderful. Storm Dara was exceptionally powerful, points out Chris Hewitt, Chief Executive of trade association Solar Energy UK. It is just the kind of extreme weather that scientists have been telling us to expect more of for decades, and renewables such as solar farms are a vital part in the fight against a warming world. Ah yes, of course, it's our fault, so we must atone for our sins by building solar factories. Just build more nuclear instead then. That's the obvious thing to do, isn't it? If you truly want to cut emissions, nuclear is the best option, but oddly, none of the Greenies like that idea. Is it because it might solve too many problems too quickly, leaving the environmental rent seekers with nothing to do and no money to demand? Just a thought. Although the damage to the Porthwen site looks substantial, one of the great advantages of solar farms is that they are quick to install and hence repair, he adds. Wow, scraping the barrel and we've barely started. Being quick to repair is hardly the point, is it? It still costs time and money to do so, time and money that would not be needed with regular generation. He then argues that their weakness is actually their greatest strength. All power infrastructure is vulnerable to extreme weather events to varying degrees, but there are good reasons why solar farms actually fare relatively well. Being decentralised, renewables are more resistant to damaged electricity networks than the old model of centralised fossil-fuelled power stations, explains Hewitt. Oh, God help us. I don't need to point out the idiocy of this. More transmission lines, more assets means more likelihood of damage, and they're more fragile and have shorter lifespans than regular generation assets. When was the last time you heard of a nuclear power station bothered by the wind? But like I said earlier, only blinkered green ideology, together with the prospect of lining your pockets with taxpayer-funded subsidies for wind and solar factories, keeps this nonsense going. Eventually in the UK and here in Australia, it will collapse under the weight of its own stupidity. When the lights eventually start going out, as they inevitably will if we continue down this path towards wind and solar, people will finally start to wake up and will be, I hope, rightly furious at how their once reliable power grid that supplied some of the cheapest electricity in the world has been sacrificed on the altar of green zealotry and comprehensively run into the ground.